I'll give you the idea in a nutshell. B-A, bay, B-E-B, B-I, bicky bye, B-O, bo. I'll give you the correct demonstration. Cutie pie, pound those horse teeth.
B-A, bay, B-E-B, B-I, bicky bye, B-O, bo, bicky bye, bo, B-U, boo, bicky bye, bo, boo. C-A, say, C-E-C, C-I, sicky, si, C-O, so, sicky, si, so, si.
Hi, folks. Welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. A little fun tune there from yesteryear memories. Let's move on from that and put on some royalty-free music. Don't know if anybody's going to ding me for that little use of a tune that's already up on YouTube. You can find it. I was just playing what was already there. I didn't see any copyright strikes on other users of that tune, so let's hope this will fly. Where are we going with this? Those of you who are familiar with the Three Stooges of yesteryear know that one of their funniest routines was basically set in a classroom where they were teaching a bunch of college freshmen English using this alphabet song. Gave me the thought for the background of this session and gave the art AI inspiration for what it gave me behind me, which I thought was kind of interesting. Let's see, what did I give it for a prompt? I said I wanted to see Three Stooges swinging the alphabet in a classroom of wise gals instead of wise guys, and I thought it was kind of funny, the wise gals that it gave me. Some of them actually look like some of the Three Stooges, and others don't, and that's kind of an interesting bit of cultural mystique that the AI has here on top of its strange linguistic preferences. I'm not sure exactly what language it's writing in behind. I think it's kind of a combination of ones it's playing with. Anyway, somebody may be able to make some sense of that. Where are we going today? This is a topic that's kind of been brewing for a while. It ties into some other things that I talk about frequently, which relate to basically all the synchronicities that we can draw on to kind of find our place in this interesting time we're living through, which I like to refer to as the Apocalypso Dance Contest. Because if you know what's really going on, it's not all that scary and can be kind of fun once you learn how to dance well. I'm going to call this one the Double Secret Codes of the Apocalypse. PPQQRRSSTT. And where are we going with that? Let me bend your brain a little bit. I'm going to start with QQ. What does that bring to mind to you? It's one of the less used letters in the alphabet, but actually one of the ones that for odd reasons, holds quite a bit of spiritual energy these days. And I'm going to try to tie together some of those threads and illustrate the part that Q plays in a very major league pattern. Okay, so QQ, if you were not aware, let's see, let's go shift over and look at my some of the tabs I've got up. Let's see, are you seeing that? Yeah, so some of you may not be aware that QQ is like China's oldest chat clone, if you will. They basically copied it from AOL back in 1999 and initially called it IOCQ because Open ICQ was their idea that, oh, okay, we're going to take steal from Amazon, or what was it? America Online was the one who had the copyright on ICQ, and we're just going to make a Chinese version and call it Open because we stole the technology. Actually, AOL was the owner at the time. That was, yeah, America Online. Then they changed the product's name to QQ after a trademark infringement lawsuit. I'm surprised there wasn't a technology infringement lawsuit as well, but that's kind of the way things were back in that time. Now, some of the interesting things you'll note around Q2 are a little bit subtle. If you think of the letter Q, what it actually looks like, it's an upside down 6. QQ turned around, or maybe mirrored, I guess, up and down, would be 66. And in fact, its initial release was in 1999, which mirrored sort of from 1666, which was the year of the Antichrist Sabbatai Zevi, who we frequently talk about. Some other interesting things to cover. Let's see. Oh my goodness, the last stable release on Windows was 9.9.9, which is also 666 upside down. Now this is a product of Tencent. This is where Tencent, which is best known for video games, but also as is one of those companies that's got their hands into everything. Let's look a little bit at the background of Tencent. Well, interestingly enough, Tencent was an early grifter in virtual currency used in video games. They were the ones that I think had that idea of subscription video games instead of something you buy and you own. Which is becoming, I guess the flagship of this new you will own nothing and be happy, the rental economy that we are being pushed into. Interestingly enough, the People's Bank of China tried to crack down on that because they were afraid that they would be exchanged for real-world goods. And so QQ also has kind of a counterculture feel to it, which has always kind of been against the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, Tencent is one of the companies that's been clamped down on really hard by the Communist Party because kids were spending too much time playing video games, and the culture of laying flat, doing as little as possible, and just enjoying life as best you could in a communist dystopia. So interesting. That's a QQ. Let's see what else they had. Well, they went international in 2009. And interestingly enough, this also coincides with the beginning of many of the game spread psyops that were basically connecting cultists of kind of the anti-Western cult together, supporting Marxist anarchists and terrorist networks like Hamas, Hezbollah, the revolutionary groups in countries that have been fighting Marxism for a while or lost to Marxism since that time. Yeah, and this is an area that allowed them to evade the world spy services for so long, because the CIA, Mossad, and whatnot were not figuring that game players would have any time to commit real crimes. I mean, that was basically the whole idea of creating games like Call of Duty and so forth, was to try to take potential troublemakers and turn them into, harmless game players, which is a good example of how a well-intentioned atheist point of view could turn pretty sour very quickly. We have a whole bunch of game players from multiple generations that have been basically trained to have zero compunction about killing everything in sight. And this is absolutely related to the spread of these senseless crimes of violence committed by all groups, mostly by young, maladjusted people who have been satanized by culture. So this ties into where I'm going with all this. Hi, sweetie. You need to go to Mama. Papa's podcasting right now. Ask Mama change. Okay, where we go next? Well, let's see. There's some interesting things in other pieces of culture. Those of you who follow politics may be aware of the QAnon conspiracy, which is called a far-right American political conspiracy theory and political movement, originated in 2017. Let's see what it has to say about this. This is from Wikipedia, which is obviously a very, very politicized source, so it's probably going to be saying some very bad things about QAnon. It centers on fabricated claims made by an anonymous individuals known as Q. These claims have been relayed and developed by online communities. The core belief is that a cabal, a satanic, cannibalistic child molesters, is operating a global child sex trafficking ring that conspired against President Donald Trump. QAnon has direct roots in Pizzagate, an internet conspiracy theory. Not a conspiracy theory, a conspiracy truth, in fact, that appeared 1 year earlier, but also incorporates elements of many other theories. QAnon has been described as a cult by the woke cult, who are the real Satanists. Oh my goodness. You just can't get any better than this. Now, this is an example of how Satan works in society. Okay, they take truth leaking out and they embellish it and sell it as a conspiracy theory and encourage stretches of the truth to go in with the truth, so it all gets labeled as a conspiracy theory, whereas it is in fact rooted in truth. And then they sell it as a way of selling other satanic agendas, such as all of the energy that's going into anti-Semitism right now, directing hate against Jews and hiding the fact that no, it's just a particular family of not really Jews. In fact, the Rothschild family are not Jews. This is bullshit. Rothschild means red shield. They are Templars. And the Templars are not Christians. They are Satanists. The Rosicrucians are Satanists. They are, in fact, selling a satanic anti-Christian trope, which is basically designed to kill all religions to pave the way for one world order, one world religion, which is exactly what the Chinese Communist Party and the World Economic Forum are trying to bring to you with the pandemic, with the vaccines, with all the proxy wars, with all of the TikTok-driven, social. What's the word I'm looking for? Anarchy that's being pushed. These idiots on hunger strikes for Hamas. Okay, this is all driven by these same people. They've got their fingers out running a whole bunch of little puppets, and they make new little echo chambers for new puppets with every opportunity that comes across, and further divide and conquer humanity in the name of the uber elite at the top. They're not Americans. They're not any nationality. They don't give a flying flipping fuck about humanity because they're not even human. Okay, let's see what else we have to see about QAnon. Now, you might think we're done there, but some of you who are into biblical research and scholarship will know that there's a really popular theme of religious exploration that centers around a gospel called Q. It's talked about as if it was a real thing, but it actually is just a presumed gospel that was a collection of Jesus's sayings. And there are many people that are selling this gospel as, okay, don't believe anything else in Christianity, but take the Q source, take the Jesus sayings, and add it to atheism, and that becomes a worldview. And this is essentially where this nonsense trope of Christ consciousness came from. The New Age Christianity that keeps the Christ, but makes us all Christ. Okay? Which is a perversion of truth. In fact, the Q conspiracy comes from, let's see, Quelle, the German word for source. You just can't make this shit up. And was invented basically about the time that the Germans were doing a number on human history with the Nazi Party, which we've talked about a fair amount recently in relation to the fact that a Nazi SS Ahnenerbe agent tutored the Dalai Lama during World War II. This is another of the scams they created. Source is what they're selling as this cosmic oneness bullshit, New Age bullshit that everybody is bought into. You're either a communist, an atheist, or it's okay to believe in source if you're an academic or something, or if you're in the media. We're all one. Or you know, and you can be a materialist sorcerer by saying, well, we're all from the same cosmic stardust, so we're all one. And we all go back to dust, and dust to dust, ash to ashes. Yeah, see? You don't need God. This Q also ties into the fact that the Quran, which also starts with a Q, doesn't it? Has sayings of Isa, Jesus. And scholars of the Quran have been positing that, well, okay, there's some book of sayings of Jesus that was integrated into Islam, but they just rejected all the other stuff about the teachings that were related to the afterlife. And it just became a bunch of useful sayings from just another prophet. And that is kind of the materialistic view of Islam, which is being turned into a very materialistic religion that is more of a cult of death, a cult of the archdemon Alat, who is also known as Alalita, who is the Arabs' version of Lilith, the adversary of all chosen species. Okay, so this whole Q bullshit has been a centerpiece of the folks that want to demystify, despiritualize Christianity and turn it into, just a piece of this one world religion that the Pope is trying to sell. The anti-Pope, I should say. This man is an anti-Pope, just as was promised in prophecy. Yep, that's the time we're in. It all fits together, and that's a lot of what I'm going to be talking about today. Okay, I think we spent enough time on Q. Let's see. I just want to do. Interestingly enough, I was looking up what some writings were about this Q thing. The presence of doublets and double traditions are verses presented by both evangelists, but in different forms. Doublets are verses which one evangelist presents twice. So again, it ties into the double theme, QQ, PP, etc., etc. Okay, well let's move on to another of these special letters. Well, we're not quite done with Q. Now another thing that came to mind thinking about Q is the idea of a queen of queens. And if you know your biblical background, the Queen of Sheba was presented as a queen of queens. Supposedly, the ruler of the kingdom of Saba, which would have been southwestern Arabia, but in fact has come to be associated with the kingdoms of Africa. And this will tie in later, so I'm going to spare talking about Solomon just yet. Interestingly enough, the shape-shifting Queen of Sheba is an interesting thing. Shape-shifting is essentially what cultural Marxism is all about. It's changing information into another form. Okay, and this is how the Queen of Sheba has become an icon of, just an Arabian Peninsula queen to a queen of queens of Africa. And in the Quran, that's where it started happening. Described as the national epic of Ethiopia. Whoa, that's nowhere near Saba, is it? That's all the way down in Africa, and start selling this cult Marxist narrative of racism. Christianity being a racist faith, and Islam being not racist, which is complete bullshit. Interestingly enough, let's keep looking into that. There is, let's see, where else? What else did I find? Looking up Queens of Queens. Very popular theme right now in media. Where did I find? Well, the Queen of Queens obviously was a description, well set description of the lead singer of Queen. Let's see, what was that guy's name? Oh, now there's a group called Queen of Queens. Freddie Mercury, who was a Muslim and actually spoke out initially against Islam and was acting like he was escaping from a cult. but now the cult is going back to Islam. And this is how the Queen of Queens, the adversary, works. Now, interestingly enough, there's a movie called Queen of Queens that came out recently that was about this queen in Africa. Ties into the Queen of Sheba theme, doesn't it? And this idea of black is right, white is bad, all of the woke cult nonsense that's being sold to basically create new racism where no racism really existed. As a matter of fact, anybody that knows the real demographics of the United States knows that anybody who takes a DNA test in the United States will find out that they are not slaves. Most of their blood comes from free people. The ones who are claiming reparations are in fact cult Marxist agitators. They want something for nothing. And that's typical of the adversary's useful idiots. That's the Satan meme. Let's go grab stuff. Get ours. You deserve it. This is satanic idea programming. This is spiritual programming, because any propaganda is by definition a communication. Communication is effectively indoctrination, is effectively preying on your mind. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing when your pastor stands up in front of you and prays for your congregation, prays for members of the congregation. They are speaking words that they hope will attract the attention of God or one of God's helpers. Nothing wrong with that. When you pray for doom, when you pray for evil, when you pray for taking something from somebody else, for a demon favoring you to give you favor, this is bad. Okay, so I think we've spent enough time on Q. Let's go back to P. PP. Well, obviously, the first thing you think of when you hear PP is piss. And there's certainly a lot of piss going around in the world today. Back in older times, in Roman times, PP was short for Pater Patriae, the father of the family. And this is a huge, huge tie to the messianic game that we've been playing. Okay? Many families have been tracking their bloodlines back to Pater Patriae of certain male lines, or Queenie of female bloodlines, okay? And that's interesting that you have PQ. PQ is the first two pieces of making a Messiah. You've got to have the founder of a bloodline, and the bloodline can only be established by combining male and female. Now, the bloodlines shared by all males and females are those of Lucifer and Lilith. The father of slavery and the mother of domination. They're the controlling ones. They're the ones that were behind the alien species that created humanity and manipulated humanity and fought over humanity for so long. The P species, the Luciferians, basically worship power, status, possessions, material possessions. Lucifer is the god of this physical universe. The Qs, the Lilithians, the queens, want power, but they don't want to have to work for it. They want to steal it. They want to basically build a fan base that goes and gets the power for them, i.e. they want to establish a hive mind. And the hive mind species of the galaxy are Lilithian in nature. They are feminine. That's why hive species are always led by queens. When a species starts transforming into a hive mind with the beautiful people at the top, the queens end up taking over and deciding which males get to mate with them. And this is happening in our species right now. This is what's going on with the pot celebrity cult. This is exactly what the woke cult is up to. It is not only a political move, it is spiritual and existential for our species. They want to turn the species into a hive mind of beautiful people at the top, the queens and their entourages, and actually they want to make hermaphrodite queens now because they don't want any of the elite to have to only have one sex. They want them to be able to choose their sex. Sound familiar? So that they can mate with whoever they choose and have surrogate children, mixing up DNA with the tools that they're developing behind the Great Firewall in China. Okay, so PP, Pater Patriae, was basically where all the male bloodlines came from in history. The famous characters that established new bloodlines would be tracked, and those bloodlines would be tracked back to the first ruler of that group, generally. And those were the kind of bloodlines that the Luciferians wanted to keep touch of. Bloodlines like that of the Caesars, different dynasties of Roman emperors, the nobility of Europe, the nobility of the world, in fact, because there were Luciferian leaders in other parts of the world too. The difference between Europe and the rest of the world, Asia, India, China, was that they were tracking both male and female bloodlines and actually doing more of a, what's the word? Not euthanasia, but, what is the word I'm looking for? I know somebody is going to be shouting, Rob, Rob, Rob! Eugenics! Eugenics! Eugenics was being practiced in the East through selective breeding of male and female bloodlines. In the West, what was going on more was trying to preserve the male bloodlines and trying to preserve the different male bloodlines by intermixing. In fact, in some cultures like Egypt, it was common practice to marry within a family. And this is how the pharaohs got the bad habit of marrying their sisters, which turned out to be not a very good idea genetically. Okay, so what else do we want to talk about PP-wise? Well, I'm going to start getting more personal here. You may have your own PP stories, but I'm going to tell you mine. My father started out naming his children after apostles. Interestingly enough, and named the oldest one Peter and the next one Paul, which is kind of strange because, you know, Paul really isn't an apostle. Very famous character in Christianity, but not an apostle. Peter, on the other hand, I think is an imaginary apostle. This so-called first pope is a fictional character. This rock that the church was built on is a total fabrication. And I'll go into that another time, but just PP for me always was my two older brothers. And they were really a PP bunch. My oldest brother was and is a very unpleasant, horrible person who none of his family will talk to him anymore. Had a really dark life that was epitomized, interestingly enough, by his sort of central character in his life was a teacher named Richard Hatton, who he called the devil. And I don't know what this teacher did to him, but that became kind of the centerpiece of his life. And I saw my brother turn into a devil by fits and stages as he got older. He was actually my mentor. He was the one that got me into classical music and introduced me to a lot of other classics. In fact, he got his degree in classics. Funny enough, named his children after Greek and Roman, or Greek and Hindu characters. Galatea was his first daughter, and Mani and Rama, who are wonderful children, and I don't think have a religious bone in their body, but they're good kids. And it's kind of sad that they drifted away from their dad, and I think their mom too. It's a sad family story. At any rate, my second brother, Paul, the most indelible story that I have about my brother Paul was out on a Boy Scout trip. Paul was one of the patrol leaders, and my dad was the scoutmaster. And my dad, he was a dedicated scoutmaster. He did it for many years, but when we were out on a trip, he'd always get us to the campsite, get us all set up, and then he'd want to go do some more exploration. He'd go hiking again and sort of leave us boys on our own, or maybe with one of the assistant scoutmasters and so forth, and we'd go on and explore the high mountains and lakes and gather up trees and stuff. He was really into collecting seedlings and replanting them, especially after he had his own farm later in life. At any rate, the indelible memory I have of my brother Paul is one time we were on a trip, I think maybe to one of the campgrounds in the Snake River. And there was a kid in the troop named Bud Humphreys. And Bud was kind of an effeminate kid, very shy, had some, of the problems that shyer kids have, less manly boys have. He was a bedwetter and, stuttered a little bit. And my brother Paul bullied him mercilessly, to the extent that this one trip, I don't know why, he decided it would be a good idea to tie Bud Humphreys up to a tree and light a fire under him. And, my brother tyrannized me a fair amount too, but I can say that he never did anything to me as bad as he did to Bud Humphreys. And one of the big regrets I have of that time is not speaking up. And speaking up for the kid that he was tyrannizing, he was bullying, and shutting it down or getting smacked down, which would have been probably what would happen. Paul's more than once clocked me or decked me because he didn't like the way I was behaving or whatever. Or, a very domineering character. he gets along okay with his family, but is also kind of drifted away from his loved ones. I always wondered why I was named Robert, especially after I found out that my parents had a stillborn girl a year before I was born. I always thought, well, maybe they were gonna name the girl Mary because that was the popular group at the time, Peter, Paul, and Mary. And they named me Robert, which kind of made my brothers mad because I got my father's name. He was named Robert too, which leads us to talking about the letter R. Those of you who are familiar with the cultural icon movie Princess Bride probably heard of the Dread Pirate Roberts, a meme from culture that has kind of spread, and there was a person who called themselves the Dread Pirate Roberts that was the guy in charge of the Silk Road internet platform that was being used for illegal purposes, drug trafficking, people trafficking, arranging murders, all sorts of things on this platform, also for trading goods and so forth, black market stuff. But anyway, this was busted, and the Dread Pirate Roberts was captured, and the whole thing shut down. Well, it didn't really shut down, it just morphed into other things. Any rate, the Dread Pirate Roberts pattern sort of became a meme. And interestingly enough, the whole idea of it was that there would be always a Dread Pirate Roberts, and the new pirate would just take the name Robert. RR makes sense to me now because I am a Robertson. And there have been many Roberts in history that were fairly famous. In fact, the name Robert comes from the ancient languages. I would say it's said to be associated with Norse and North German, Hrothbert, which is also the source of Roderick and Bartholomew, which comes from Ptolemy. Many people don't realize that connection. Also, Hrad is basically Herod. And there is quite a bit of indication that the line of Herod continued after the era of the destruction of the temple. And if you know, the Herodian dynasty was a very important family in ancient times, and to Roman history as well. Herod Agrippa was such good friends with the Roman emperors that he was actually one of the best friends of the Emperor Claudius, and lived right there in the palace with the emperor, and was on a very close basis with all the family. In fact, could well have had some children with the nieces of Claudius, who may have been the ones that, after the fall of that dynasty, or during the course of that dynasty's evolution, spread those genes north. And it's my belief that the interest in Germany that happened during Augustus's reign, that led to the loss of the legions, the 3 legions of Varus, Remember that? And the punitive campaign of Augustus's nephew. Is it nephew or well, let's see. It was the son of Tiberius, so that would have been, who was an adoptive nephew, so an adoptive second nephew or something like that. Germanicus, the brother of Claudius, led an expedition to try to recover the legions, the lost eagles of the legions, and did a whole bunch of damage up there. Well, my suspicion is that that interest in Germany was driven by looking for these members of bloodlines that could possibly rise to be a threat. And if you look at the campaigns of history, they make a lot more sense from that standpoint of who's attacking who and why. The expedition, in fact, of Caesar and later on Claudius into the British Isles has the same flavor. Basically looking for competing claimants to certain bloodlines. And in fact, that comes back to haunt in the legend, in the story of Constantine, who was from a British mother in England and became Caesar while he was in England when his father became Augustus. His father was Constantius, and somehow the son becomes the sole emperor and has this vision and conquers in the sign of the Christogram, which is not a cross. Most Christians don't realize that the Christogram is not a cross. It is a chi rho, which has nothing to do with your conventional cross. Absolutely nothing. In fact, the chi rho symbol was in use at least 200 years before Jesus in the Greek world, and is the root of the city name Cairo, which is basically where the cult of Serapis was centered. It later on kind of moved to Alexandria, but Cairo is where is the area where the Serapeum was before. At any rate, that kind of goes into R. SS. Well, certainly brings some very good connotations there. The SS was the organization that Hitler, the kind of the elite organization within Nazi Germany, which formed around Heinrich Himmler, who was very, very big into the occult. In fact, there was a whole segment of the SS called the Ahnenerbe, which I told you were the ones that tutored the Dalai Lama and were very closely tied with the theosophical cults that were forming all around Europe, which were very closely tied to the 1666 Antichrist Sabbatai Zevi. SS, interestingly enough, also brings to mind ship connotations. Now, the U.S. ships were always the USS, United States ship, this and that. SS was retained when Star Trek came out. And the SS Enterprise was the flagship of Star Trek, right? Interestingly enough, I think later on maybe they changed that. They took the SS out and they changed it UFP, United Federation of Planets, something like that, to kind of hide that connection. Let's see, what else came up today? Oh, somebody posted a picture of what was it on Twitter, and wanted a description, and I said SS stands for I don't know, sinful Satanist. Actually, sin is another big one for me. My wife's name is Sin. Kind of a strange name for a woman. And I didn't know that when I met her. She was going by the name of Aya. Because, you know, I guess people had teased her about her name. And the name Aya sort of struck me when I met her as being kind of like, oh, that's kind of like ayahuasca, cool. And only later I found out that she was really Sin, and sometimes called herself Sinaya, which brings to mind a very great piece of South American music called Sensemaya. At any rate, SS has a lot of sinful associations. Now we're getting to the pattern here that we've got. So the P pattern is kind of Luciferian, the Pater Patriae. The Q pattern is the pattern of the Lilithians. The R pattern is the pattern of the Messiah, the center of this 5-letter journey. And the S pattern, again, is swinging back. And if you know anything about spiritual development, you know it goes from periods of connection, of feeling like you're connected to good stuff, to feelings of disconnection and like you're under attack from the adversary. Anybody who's been through a dark night of the soul knows how a spiritual path swings back and forth. And generally, a spiritual awakening starts with a Luciferian enlightenment. The P. The enlightenment. I see the light. That's sometimes people's only spiritual experience is getting to see the light. Oh, well, infinite connection. I can see everything. Everything is one. And you can come away from that being very materialistic. Not having any sense of spirituality, really, but a sense of empowerment, if you will. And that's definitely a Luciferian interpretation of that. And there's many ways you can go. And I talked about that recently, about, you know, what happens when you see the light. There's a lot of paths you can take, depending on how you interpret what that experience means. Okay. The dark path you can take from there is the path of the adversary. Okay, we're all one. Okay, I'm going to sell my idea as everybody's idea, because what I believe must be what everybody believes. And this is the oneness cults. Okay, these are the people that my God is the only God. The way I view the world is the only right way, and I'm going to force it on everybody else. This is satanic. Even if you call yourself a Christian, even if you call yourself a Muslim or a Buddhist or a Hindu or whatever, if you believe that your way, your truth is the only truth, you are following this Lilithian cult path. It's a hive mind path, or a path that wants to create a hive mind. So the Lilithian satanic soul wants to find either a hive mind, a narrow-minded echo chamber that fits their viewpoint, or they want to go create one and be a cult leader. Okay? Both of those patterns, both of those paths are satanic, ultimately. They can serve localized good, but they are based upon a definition of good which is very uniperspective. My good is the only good that's important. The good of peace. Well, peace is not an absolute good. Peace could be the peace of the grave. The peace of an Orwellian society that's told what to think, how to think, when to think it, and is, hit with shock therapy whenever they step outside of the path that they've been given. That's a form of peace. It's not a form most people would want, but in fact, that's a form some people, these Lilithians, would accept. A lot of Lilithian souls like to be told what to do, when to do it, how to do it. They want to join a hive mind cult. They don't want to be an individual. They want to be a me too soul. And this is why I teach that hive minds are not the good guys. Yes, there is a source hive mind that all the me too souls come from, the non-player characters. But it's not where you want to go back to. You don't want to go back to source. That's a failure in the game of souls. Anybody can do that. Anybody can just wander through life like Forrest Gump, letting the wind blow them wherever they go and just doing what they're told, following their programming. That's a choice, but it's not a choice that's going to get you elevated to higher consciousness. It's not a choice that's going to get you into the better heavens, because it's not building anything interesting in your karma. You're just following orders. You're just a soldier in a hive mind. And that's not a way to advance spiritually. Sorry, it's just truth. Okay, so Q and R are these very more negative places you can be. Q and S, excuse me. Q being the Queen of Queens, the hive mind set. The S is even worse, being the sinful set. Okay, and this gets into, okay, you could be part of a hive mind that intends to do good, that intends to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. And that is a hive mind that can be fairly useful. Ants and bees are hive mind species that are useful. They can be dangerous too. If you've ever seen two ant hives, competing ant hives, or especially ones of different species having a war, it is totally brutal. They are ripping each other's heads off and basically intent on total genocide of the other hive. Bees are the same way, and that's why they don't allow other queens to develop. If a new queen is born and the old queen is still going strong, they will kill the new queen, or they will force it out of the hive, and if they're lucky, some of the young bucks will follow it and try to form a new hive. Okay, this is how bees work. Hive mind species are very brittle. They are very, very subject to quick changes in their environment, in whatever they're depending on, are not easy to adapt to, because all of the hive is programmed to run certain patterns. And when those patterns don't fit the environment, those species die off the quickest. And if you look at where species extinction is happening most rapidly right now, it is in insect species, especially bees. And this is a big worry for us, because so many plant species are dependent upon bees for pollination. Again, it all ties back to You don't want hive mind species in charge of your planet. Your planet will not live very long, or it will become very static. And hive mind species, there are hive mind species in the galaxy. They are not the good guys. They can be allies if they're not too warlike. Hive minds aren't necessarily warlike, but if they feel that their existence, their planet is threatened. A good example is if you've seen the movie Starship Troopers. Starship Troopers is another of the movies that is absolutely inspired by true things. There are an insectoid species that is a hive mind. There have been hive mind spiders on this planet, which is where the Scorpion King legend comes from, where the cult memory of that became the spider Shelob in Tolkien's novels. Yes, there were hive mind spiders, and they tried to control humanity. They were shapeshifters. And that's why you see so many characters in the Vedas who have these multiple arms. Sometimes the most common is having two sets of arms and a pair of legs, so that would be 6 appendages, maybe with wings, so that's 2 more, that's 8-legged, or sometimes with 3 sets of arms, sometimes with many sets of arms. Okay? These are all things that are not just out of people's imagination. They are passed down culturally. They are recorded. Most of the recordings are gone because paints on stone wear off. And stone carvings can get destroyed in earthquakes. Parchment, or writing on skins, is even more fragile. It only lasts for a short period of time. And, these numby-gumby New Age archaeologists who claim that it's not possible that there could have been civilizations before, now they're moving the goalposts back, having found even older sites than Göbekli Tepe. They're now saying, okay, we'll admit to 14,000 years ago that there were fairly advanced civilizations making stone structures and having a pretty developed culture with pottery and grain production and animal husbandry, which are all the basic things you need to have a static culture. But they're doubling down on anything older than that and trying to discredit people like Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, and so forth, Robert Schoch, who have made very, very good cases that, for instance, the pyramids and the Sphinx are much, much, much older than their traditional dating. Especially also some of the stone vessels that were found in Egypt could not possibly have been made with the technology of that age, the human technology of that age. The precision, the tooling, etc. that was used to make these things almost defies modern day. In fact, sort of does defy. I mean, if you tooled up to make stuff like this, you maybe could, but it would be a huge, million or billion-dollar investment to do it, just to make a little pot to put ointment in, like some of these things that they found. Now, these were being used by later people, but alongside them are the pottery that those people produced, which is much, much inferior. The stonework that they produced in the dynastic period was far inferior to these other older ones that they happened to find when they came back to this place that had been depopulated, was inhabited by a different culture and had very different characteristics. In fact, is documented in human records as a culture that came from the sky. The sky people are talked about all over the world. Every culture has a little bit different story about them, about how they looked, about how they interacted. In some cases, they were people that came from the sea. In some cases, they lived under the ground. They were reptilian or bird-like or fish-like or centaurs, minotaurs, chimeras, half lion, half this, all of these mixed creatures are not just imagination. It's so absurd to think that everything that humanity has recorded just came out of thin air as imagination. Especially, it's kind of stupid because thought creates reality. If you can imagine it, you are bringing it into existence, ephemerally, if not more permanently. Images that are shared gain more material manifestation. This is exactly how the Messiah game works. Messiahs come to fulfill the needs of the spiritual energy of the moment. And sometimes you need something negative to happen. That's why you'll get an anti-Messiah, like in 1666. This cat that basically birthed all of the darkness that we are fighting today. It all grew out of this 1666 anti-Messiah Sabbatai Zevi. And ultimately created this nexus of energies that produced the real Messiah. This has been a process we've been swinging through. And your part in it will be given to you by these synchronicities. Name synchronicities are the most important. Those are the ones that tie you to certain characters, certain key characters in the story. And that's what we're really covering today. Other people only get number synchronicities. Those tie you to basically the numbered characters in the story, which the number of the beast is a number of a lookup into the non-player character category. Okay? You are one of the characters that's there kind of as window dressing. Now that's not a punishment. It's not a reward. It just happens to be the character that you have in this run of the simulation. And how you play it will determine what sort of opportunities you get, or if you get another chance to play the game. You get to reincarnate and go to some of the many different heavens, and they will help you find a new incarnation. They don't get to just pick anything. They have a range of characters that they are allowed based upon their karmic signature. Every universe has its own karma. And that places those universes closer or further from the highest heaven, which is the universe of God. Not this physical universe. That's Lucifer's universe. Lucifer's universe is kind of the median place. It's not too good, not too bad. It's a place of testing. And the hells kind of all fall on this side of the physical universe, and the heavens fall on this side. And depending on how you play the game, you might enjoy a hellish eternity. There's some people that are masochists. There are some people that are sadistic. They actually like pain and suffering. By God, they're going to get it. And dish it out to people who like it. That's what hells are like. Any rate, back to the letters. So T, to me is my last name, Trump. It's also the name of a pretty important character in this saga right now, Trump, and related to a very important prophecy, the last trumpet. Actually, many trumpets that are heralding the end of days. And this ties it all up for me, along with a lot of other messages that tell me where I fit in this game. Why I am telling you all this, so you will hopefully be able to learn through your own synchronicities where you fit in the game. Because when you get to play a Messiah character, one that's really tied in, an indelible part of the plan, who has a mission to accomplish that's going to be accomplished whether you do all the right things or you don't, that will be your opportunity to become a God. Now, there are 4 levels of God consciousness. Your first chance at a Messiah mission will get you basic admission to the highest heaven. That admission is basically good for one visit. You go to the highest heaven, you're incarnated as a human in the highest heaven. You have a little celebration party because you earned your godhood. And then, people look at your karma and say, well, okay, congratulations, you earned partial control over your own universe, but you played, pretty far afield from God. So you can go play where you want to play, but we're going to close the door to the highest heaven. And you're not getting back here till you graduate again. We'll have a little party, mostly kind of a roast for these evil characters. I call it the Cosmic Oscars. They hand out a lot of booby prizes for people that earn their godhood doing evil. And people jeer and, make fun of them. And, basically they get to deride them for all the dark and evil things they did to earn their universe before they shut off the door to the highest heaven. And bye-bye. They're off to wherever their universe resides, which again, like I say, is on the other side of Lucifer's kind of central testing universe. Okay, and this ultimately is how the game works to separate the deserving souls that play by God's rules, which are karma's rules too, because karma is God's favorite daughter, favorite child. Lucifer is God's first child, but is not a well-behaved one. Lucifer can be kind of an asshole, very testy asshole, and serves a purpose in creation. But the testy version of Lucifer is always going to be in the middle here. The better versions of Lucifer are the ones that have chosen not to follow in the footsteps of their original. And the best version of Lucifer actually is the Archangel Michael. who has been fighting the spiritual battle on God's side for a long time. And, got pulled in some pretty dark places of, like what happened with Joan of Arc. Got a lot of people killed in the name of God to get us to where we are today. And Luciferians do that. The good ones will move the plan forward, even if it means hurting and killing and using people. That is their way of being devoted to God. Again, it's not what we want in the highest heaven. We don't want troublemakers there. What we want to do in the highest heaven is raise the best sons of God and daughters of karma. The leaders that are going to go out into creation and help move stories along, teaching players to play the game less darkly. You don't have to kill when you can incapacitate or imprison. You don't have to conquer when you can isolate. Put a Dyson sphere around your enemy. Let them keep running their hive mind, just don't let them out to poison the rest of the universe. Things like that. This has all been done. Just hasn't been done as well as we're doing it in this simulation, which is now finally converging. This is the simulation that finally hit all the notes of creation just right. Why? Because it is a version where Lucifer's universe was expanded to have basically an infinite number of scenarios for you to incarnate in. An infinite number of planets, galaxies, systems, species, whatever, to have your own Messiah story in, or your tribe's Messiah story, the Messiah story of some species of furries, the Ewoks or something like that. Okay? That's all out there for you to discover through reincarnation and karma. The thing is that to get to the highest heaven, you've got to earn it through karmic choices, good or bad, and you've got to maintain it because your leadership may be challenged. Even if you have control of your own universe, unless you get to the absolute highest God level, you're going to have souls there that are going to be challenging your leadership, who are there because they're like you, but they're going to envy you and want to take over because they think they know how to run your universe better than you. That's essentially what the spiritual battle going on in Lucifer's universe, in this physical universe, is. Everyone thinks that they know better than Lucifer how to run this universe, how to organize it, what laws to institute as the laws of physics and chemistry and etc., etc. DNA, whatever. Okay? That battle is going to keep going on until Lucifer banishes all of the competing souls that don't submit to his rule. So effectively, all of the universes other than God's eventually become kind of a hive mind. They become a dictatorship or a collective that have a certain function. So they basically function kind of like a Borg, an NPC source that has a theme. This universe might specialize in casting healer character. This one specializes in casting art characters. And it's only the very, very most original ones that will get to stay in the highest heaven, who can basically play the game in its center. And the center is the time of the Messiah. It's this special time when the most healthy, functional, sustainable human society existed. Wasn't perfect by any means, but it was perfect enough to produce the Messiah. And so it will retain that shape from the middle and continue raising children in that same environment. Basically, the best of all possible worlds to raise children in. And that's what will feed the rest of the game. And eventually characters will get to either assimilate with a hive mind that fits their particular desire for a place just right. They will let go of their ambitions and they will just exist within their chosen commune, if you will. Or they will keep playing the game until they can earn their own universe and try to form their own commune. And the communes may be made up of more advanced souls who choose to assimilate and to become part of this commune. But more likely, if you don't run it very well, if you don't treat the souls in your universe very well, over time it will come to contain just low-level non-player character consciousness souls who will just do whatever the great grand poobah leader say without question. And you can see that those kind of communes are forming in communist countries. In China, that is what Xi Jinping wants, is for everybody to do whatever he says, no matter if he just jump or sink or swim, cut your own throat. You do it because the great leader said so. This is communism. Spiritual communism is the same thing. It just has a spiritual basis for it. And this is what these spiritual communist gurus are trying to do. These cult gurus that want everybody to believe what they believe and to do the meditation the way they say and follow the diet that they say is right and do all the things that they say is right, and then you will get enlightenment. Okay, this is a cult. This is not leading you to God. This is not going to get you to the higher levels of spirituality. But that's okay. If you don't want to get up there, there's no reason everybody has to be a god. It's not easy to be a god. It's often not very fun. It has responsibilities. Okay, so basically all of the letters of the alphabet have these associations. And if you look at the names of people in your circle, you might see connections. This is one of the reasons why so many people are into genealogy. Not just the Mormons, but many people are into that because they're finding connections through their DNA lineage. Okay, and if you have a connection to some messianic bloodline, and I'm not talking about capital M, I'm talking about little m. Okay, the bloodlines of great people have a certain anointment to them. Mozart is Mozart because Mozart was a special soul. His DNA is a very special concoction that points to this soul that has earned a spot a permanent spot in the highest heaven. Okay, this is a God-level soul of music. Finding others of the same bloodline may have latent connections to that, may actually produce more Messiah candidates because it's got kind of a magic sauce DNA-wise. But that's not all there is to it. DNA is only a piece of the puzzle. DNA produces soul vehicles, produces your physical incarnation form, not the soul that comes to inhabit it. The physical incarnation form has kind of a default karma associated with that DNA combination. That sauce that's pointing into, okay, this particular combination of DNA maps most closely to this kind of character, either in the NPC database, the Borg hive mind, the source hive mind, or into karma's database. These are all of the really good ideas that got to be God-level souls, God-level ideas, God-level identities. And there have been many of them. In fact, many of the oldest souls have had multiple return trips to the highest heaven with new discoveries, new specialties. You don't have to, if you go become the god of music, you might get tired of being the god of music. Okay? So you specialize in something else. You have to give up that title and earn another one. Now, the god of music doesn't go away in that process. The god of music becomes a non-player character, runs on autopilot until a replacement is found. Somebody who plays that character better than the one that established that role in the highest heaven. And this is how it all works. That the highest heaven is always finding new souls that are worthy of being sons of God or daughters of karma. It's a growing place. But as it grows, it also doesn't just have multiple gods of music. It then says, okay, there's somebody that's exceeded the last god of music that is a better representation of God's taste in music, because God has very individual tastes, like any soul does. Okay, and that soul will replace the previous god of music, and the previous one will be booted down a level, will be a sub-god of music, until they can earn their way back to the front place. And that front place will be determined by when the space-time of the music god finds a new, better version. So it's almost like Lucifer's physical universe works, only the music universe is constantly just working on better versions of music, whereas Lucifer's universe is working on better versions of Lucifer and better versions of all the gods. At any rate, I think that's pretty much what I wanted to convey today. I think we're getting very close to finishing up this exercise in fun. And I would encourage you, if you learn something from this, go out and start thinking about the influences in your uh, spiritual grifter types out there telling you what to look for in synchronicities and selling this nonsense stuff about, oh, you can feel the aura of the crystals and you can, oh, when you see the clock every time and it, okay, this can be a factor, but it's not the only factor. And if that's all you're looking for, or if you're looking for signs in the clouds, or, you know, slaughtering chickens and looking at their entrails, which is, you know, another popular form of divination that I understand is coming back among some of the Satanists that are infiltrating the United States these days. Synchronicities don't come from God necessarily. Rarely do they come directly from God. They come from these lower level gods, these lower level characters, even the angels of particular gods, okay? So each god has their own spiritual hierarchy within their universe. That's where the idea of angels, archangels, saints, and spirits come from. Okay, there are 4 spiritual levels within each spiritual universe. There is only one spiritual universe that is the highest heaven. That is the place where God consciously there. They're a piece of grass, a grain of sand, an elementary particle, whatever. That's your number in the bigger plan of creation. Okay, most of those numbers are just a lookup in the master board catalog. And there is a master catalog there in the highest heaven that has all of the characters that have ever existed in any version of the simulation that was released for testing, even some that weren't released for testing, that were just kept in God's mind for, okay, I'm gonna keep some of this stuff just to surprise folks with. Other players are always challenged because that's what creation is all about. That's what consciousness is all about. It's a game. It's meant to be interesting. It's meant for you to learn how to play better, and on the side of God and karma, or on the side of Borg and Lilith. This is your nature. This is your play style. You can change it if you want to. That requires free will, dedication, and patience. And sometimes you will find that you can bang, 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 bang against your nature, and you this endless wheel that they'll never get off, and I just want to get off, Mr. Wizard. Okay, that's because you've been banging your head on the same false identity that is not you. Okay? This is what is so dark about what's going on right now in political programming, because social media is all about pushing false identities, pushing narcissistic ideas of who you are onto you. And it's very dark, and it's very damaging to souls, because you know, you never really feel at home skinny, you can't make yourself skinny by saying, my body is perfect. I'm sorry, that's not the way it goes. You're being a narcissistic, delusional idiot, and it's going to hurt you. It's cognitively dissonant to the truth of your current incarnation vehicle. And again, it is only going to be a problem for you if you don't realize that this is just one incarnation. You chose this incarnation, if you are a more conscious soul, you chose it so you could learn something. And yes, we do choose incarnations to be we see that we have holes in our karmic perspective. If all of your incarnations were as queens or kings or CEOs of major corporations, you would not have a very well-rounded perspective of the multiverse. And only by having a well-rounded perspective can you build your soul's Merkaba in enough dimensions, in enough directions to earn your own universe. Okay? You don't get to be a god by over-specializing. You have to deal with being a complete quantum consciousness. Having to deal why we need to make sure that we deserve what we get. It's taken a long time to develop all this, and earlier versions of the highest heaven had a lot of sinful souls there, a lot of dark souls who didn't really belong there. And it's taken a long time to get them to self-select out of there. That's why God incarnates himself, because every new incarnation of God substrate for generating sons of God and daughters of karma. Okay? Before sex was invented, all there were sons of God in heaven. And that's where the Bible story comes from and tells you, well, sons of God came and found the daughters of men attractive. Okay? The daughters of men were creatures that had never been to heaven, who had never had the God experience. They were actually creatures of Lilith, the adversary. That's why the sons of God were so tempted by them and wanted to come into them. Okay? Try to destroy your family, who will try to take you away from your wife, who will turn you against your children, who will take your children from you or prevent you from having children. That's all the kind of stuff that the Lilithian souls still do. They are still here. In Hindu tradition, they are called asuras. They are shape-shifting hermaphroditic creatures of either spiritual or physical form. And they hate creation. They hate chosen species. They want to destroy this species. Even after knowing that and produced a Messiah that's shaped a new version of the highest heaven, they're still unhappy about that, and they still are going to try to destroy every other Messiah they can find, the little M's. And there's a lot of little M's Messiahs that are going to come out of this big event as it spreads, because we're letting this new version out of the lab. That's what makes the apocalypse so special. This is the real singularity, not the stupid Big Bang, not the silly nonsense about life singularity. It's a spiritual event. It's a spiritual milestone that is going to give every but there's an installation phase, if you will, and that's what we're going through right now. It's like, those of you who have had Windows computers for a while, it's less obvious on the smartphones, but in Windows, you know that every time you upgraded a new version of Windows or some of the patches, you went through like a phase of pain where some of your programs and apps didn't work well anymore, and they needed to be upgraded, or you need to backgrade, and there was a churn, a turmoil. That's what we're going through right now, is this churning turmoil period where, okay, there is still point. I don't know if anybody knows what all of them are, because not all of them are human prophecies. And there's more than humans involved in this end game. There are players on all sides trying to bring about their missions in this game going on, not really knowing their missions. That's kind of the nature of being a Messiah character, little m or big M. You don't know what the right thing to do is. You're going to do the right thing in this. You develop your So whatever character you're playing, you have an opportunity to play it well enough to earn godhood. You might only be a dog catcher in heaven, but you will get the experience of growing up, of living in that highest heaven as a resident of this very interesting city of God. And that's worth going for. You can earn a spot just by being an especially good parent. I think I'm getting close to the finish lines here, so I'm going to switch back to that background. There's a lot of ways to be there. Maybe I'll just I'm going to see when I get back to the highest heaven. There was a guy, I can't even remember his name, but in my grade school, there was a janitor who was just doing his job, but doing it well. He knew all the kids' names. He would kind of police the hallways because there were never teachers watching, and he always knew all the shenanigans that went on, because the kids didn't really pay attention to the janitor, thinking that, oh, we've only got to worry about the teachers telling on us. And this janitor was incredibly effective at his job. He didn't tyrannize anybody. He didn't use or manipulate anybody. He wasn't unhappy with his job. And, when I think about that school, that janitor was one of the most important people there, was far more influential in a positive way than the principal of the school or any of the administrators or any of the pushy mom, helicopter parents that tried to run the school. And that character, that janitor, is in the highest heaven. I'm going to meet him again, and I'm going to ask his name this time and remember it, because now I realize what an important character he was in my life. And that's just the way it works. Proximity to the Messiah, this time round, this running of the bulls, maybe a good way to express it, you'll get another chance. And ultimately, wherever you go in your path, whether you decide to take your journey to Andromeda and have part in some messianic story there to grow your particular nature, eventually you've got to come back to this simulation, this center point, and earn a spot in that highest heaven. You'll get there, but you might, just be there. One of the really important characters towards the center. And that's how we keep this center of space-time, or time-space, from drifting, from being corrupted. Okay? You can go out anywhere, that can all get corrupted, it can all fall apart. We've always got this chewy center to return to. And it is so well planned, so well documented, so well supported, that it really doesn't matter what you do to the past or what you do to the future. Knock yourself out. And that's I guess where you'll get when you finally understand where you belong. That's why, I guess my favorite spiritual song would have to be Simple Gifts, which is also the same tune as Lord of the Dance. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. But when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. Dance, dance, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, said he, and I'll lead you all wherever you may be, and I'll lead you all in the dance, said he. And, that's a great song. If you want to hear the best version of that I've ever heard, it was sung by a couple of guys. Their names, and one was named Benjamin. The other one is Bill, I think. Bill Crockett, Benjamin Luxett. I think that's the bunch. One was an opera singer, and one was a bluegrass singer, and somehow they got together and did a few albums of folk music, contrasting American and English folk music. And I have to say that those albums were some of the most influential music of my life, even though my favorite music is mostly classical, and that there's a few tunes that they do together that are just incredible, and the best one, of course, is this one I just mentioned. So plug in for that that couple of guys. I don't know that story was. At any rate, I think that's about it for today. Like, share, subscribe, interact in any way you choose. Until next time, this is Rob Trump signing out for the Ominous Hour saying happy karma. Take care.